Welcome to the Finance Marketing Podcast, a show that empowers finance professionals to market their businesses in ways that feel good and actually achieve results. I'm your host, Hillary. I've been working with folks in financial services to develop marketing strategies that work and create results-oriented marketing content since 2020. And I've learned a lot about what works in finance marketing, what doesn't work, and where financial services pros get stuck. Join us each Friday as we explore real, effective ways to market your finance business and connect with folks who truly embody your ideal clients. I'm thrilled to welcome Stephen Jarvis to the Finance Marketing Podcast. Stephen is the CEO and head CPA of Retirement Tax Services, where he's transforming the way the financial planning industry does tax planning. Now, Stephen and I have been connected on LinkedIn for a while, and we finally met in person last fall at FinCon. He was the guy running around in one of those crazy print tracksuits, making taxes fun. And I've had the pleasure of having Stephen as a guest on another podcast that I co-host, so I'm always excited to have him on. He has this really rare talent of making tax talk not just understandable, but genuinely enjoyable. So in today's episode, we dive into Stephen's unique approach to marketing his services. Stephen has built an impressive marketing ecosystem for his business and an impressive audience. As of this recording date, he has over 13,000 followers on LinkedIn, which I have to say is pretty impressive, especially for a CPA. So we'll talk about how Stephen leverages content creation like podcasts, LinkedIn, and email marketing to reach and engage his audience, and how his firm partners with financial advisors to elevate their tax planning services, which in turn boosts their marketing efforts. Stephen is all about consistent, intentional action, and he'll share why that approach is so powerful, even in a world full of shiny new strategies and tools. Stephen's down-to-earth approach to tax planning and marketing is not only effective, but it also offers a refreshing perspective on how to build a successful and really client-focused business. So without further ado, let's dive in. Stephen, I'm so excited to have you here today. This is not our first podcast recording that we've done together. We've done another one for a different podcast that I co-host with a friend of mine. And so I'm just so excited to get the chance to speak with you again. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. I appreciate the invite back. That's always a good sign that I did a good job the first time. So I love those confirmations that I'm doing something right.
Absolutely. We love an invite back. Today, we're going to take a totally different approach to our conversation. And what I love about having people like you on here is that you're a financial services professional yourself. So we're going to talk about your own marketing and how you market to get clients and things like that. But then you also partner with financial advisors, in a really impactful way, I think, to improve their own offerings and how they help their clients and things like that, which also relates to marketing. So I love this hybrid approach that we're going to take here. Before we get into all that, let's start. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah, so Stephen Jarvis, CPA, which I know is always an exciting introduction of, yes, let's please listen to more CPAs talk. But the good news is communication for CPAs is a really low bar. And so I can get on stage and make jokes about making eye contact and people think it's great. And we're off and running and having a lot of fun. So if you hadn't guessed already, I don't fit a lot of the stereotypes of being a CPA. And so I recognized that early in my career. But I did start in a really traditional CPA kind of career path. I worked at big national firms. I worked long hours and in small offices, all those kinds of things. And then a few years ago, had the opportunity to make this pivot, left the big national accounting firms where I was set to become a partner and started my own company, really partnering with financial advisors. And so I went from spending the vast majority of my time, 90+% of my time on client service, on technical accounting work, to now I own a business. I do digital marketing. I run multiple podcasts. I've grown my LinkedIn presence. I've been discovering all these things over the last couple of years. So I love learning from people. I love sharing my own experience so other people can learn from it as well.
That's great, Stephen. And I just have to add in a personal little nugget here that I think my listeners might find interesting is you and I met in person at a conference last fall, right?
Yeah.
And I'd been following you on LinkedIn for a while. We discovered that big national accounting firm that you used to work for is actually the same firm that my CPA father works at, which is just such a small world. But
love that you've gone out on your own. So let's talk about your marketing first. You mentioned podcasting, you mentioned LinkedIn. I'd like to ask you about each of those things. Is there anything else in your marketing kind of ecosystem that you could mention?
Yeah. So as far as where new leads come from, it's like people that get into my sphere, because I'm sure you talk about this on the podcast, but when we look at my marketing funnel, we look at leads at the top. When people get exposed to me, it's through the podcast, it's through LinkedIn, it's through the speaking that I do. I try to get on a lot of stages. It's through third-party articles. I write on a variety of platforms, both consumer and advisor facing. And so, yes, there are a lot of things I do that are really strictly for the intention of get people on my email list and get them exposed to who I am. Because that's the other piece that you didn't mention, is I do a ton of email marketing, because it can sound antiquated in the world of AI and social media, but it's still super effective.
Yeah, it as one of the most effective, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, not a lot of people in financial services really get into email marketing. So I would actually love to spend some time there if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
But tell us first about your podcast. You have 2 podcasts, am I correct?
I do. So I have the Retirement Tech Services podcast, which is my advisor-facing podcast. It comes out once a week. I think I'm over 200 episodes in now. And it's I always have a guest on this show. In the early days, there were some episodes I did on my own, and to be honest, I just didn't enjoy it. And when you don't enjoy something, you don't do it and put your full effort into it. And so I switched to only doing episodes with guests, because they're a lot more fun. And for the most part, my guests are either advisors or tax planning focused CPAs. The whole goal of the podcast, and a lot of what I do that's free, really follows this idea that I at least originally learned from Michael Kitces, which is give 95% of it away for free, and trust that there's going to be that small percentage of people who still want more from you. Mm-hmm. So I try to give out really quality content that in and of itself is beneficial for people. I want my content, I want my presentations, especially when I got on stage, and I tell my podcast guests this all the time. If people don't remember our names, I still want them to have gotten value out of listening to us.
Yeah, I think that's so smart. Can I ask you, because 95%, can I ask you, what is the 5% that you don't give away for free? Is that the stuff that it's just too hard to talk about to a broad audience? You need, to be able to have a conversation with someone, or what is that 5%?
That's a really good question. And as soon as you say that back to me, I realized, okay, the 95% is certainly a swag. I haven't measured this. So maybe it's 90, maybe it's 85. Well, let's not get hung up on the number, but it is a very small percentage. And really what that small percentage represents is direct access to me and my time. It's hands-on resources. So so one of the distinctions I make for myself is that I don't produce content that has cliffhangers to it. So I'm not writing that article that then the last paragraph is shaded and says, click here and pay me a bunch of money if you want to know what the last paragraph said. It's so a good example. One of the most commonly requested resources for that people reach out to us for is this 37-point checklist we made up on reviewing tax returns. And so this started out as content we gave away for free of podcast articles, presentations of, hey, here's how you can effectively review a tax return. And it was really genuinely meant to help people do it on their own. And then what we found was that was helpful for some people, but other people said, yeah, but I want examples. I want to see recordings of you doing it. I want to be able to ask questions and get specific insight on my specific clients. And so those are the kind of things that live in that other realm. Of not in that huge percentage that I give away for free. And so it's not that there's some kind of trade secret. I tell people all the time that signing up for a membership with Retirement Tax Services is not going to expose you to a tax planning strategy you've never heard of. Mm-hmm. It's going to give you the resources to help you execute it in a systematic and consistent way.
I love this. So what I'm hearing is the difference is give everything away for free that you can, right? If you have specific questions and you want, specific advice for your situation, that is not free. That requires your personalized time, right?
Yeah. Other things that I look at that I might not be as likely to give away for free are things that, and this is prevalent in the tax world, things that change all the time. And so if I need to go back and constantly update things and you need the latest and greatest version, well, I want to know that I've captured you on my email list, that you're committed to what I'm doing. So another resource that we do, because we kind of have this in between, right? Where we have things that are completely free and I don't even know that you're looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have things that are free, but I'm going to ask for your email address because if I give it to you, I do want something in exchange. It's just not money yet. And then we have the things I'm going to ask for your money. And so for us, that in between level of we're going to ask for your email address, but not ask for money yet. We have a desktop tax guide that hundreds, if not thousands, of advisors use at this point. I always have a laminated copy on my desk. And so that's one where a lot of work goes into that. But I also know that most large investment company, most large tax firm also puts out something similar. So you also just kind of have to look at what's available. It wouldn't make any sense for me to charge for this thing that looks very similar to everybody else's and is just slightly different. And I think it's different in a really impactful way because mine's specific to financial advisors. But still, what's my value proposition for asking you to pay me for this thing that you can get over there for free? So instead, I say, Hillary, if you'll just give me your email address, and with that email address, I'm going to send you a weekly tax newsletter in your email that's got relevant tax stuff in it. Does that seem like an okay exchange of value here? And most people seem to think that yes, we have a very, very low unsubscribe rate, so they must be getting some value out of those emails.
I love that. Well, let's get really, really tactical here for a second, and then I want
Sure.
to ask you about your emails. Where do you put those things? Those free but gated resources, right? Where someone has to give you their email. Are you linking to those in podcast show notes? Are you posting about them on your LinkedIn? Where can people get those things?
Yeah, it definitely all comes back to our website, retirementtaxservices.com. But we link back to the website through the podcast, through LinkedIn. Although my personal experience has been that trying to do anything that kicks people off of LinkedIn does not do well on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, they want us all to be involved on their platform, but they want us to kind of be captive to it. And so I have mixed feelings about LinkedIn. I'm clearly very committed to it. I post every single day. I have for 2+ years now. Have a very large audience there. But fastest way to kill your engagement on LinkedIn is to put links.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. I've heard so many people say that, especially lately. I think the algorithm is really kind of punishing content that tries to get people off of LinkedIn. So I'm glad you brought that up. Now, talk to me about your emails. What do you send in your emails? And do you segment your email list for the advisors and the consumer side?
Yeah. So I guess you had asked me about my podcast plural, and then I only told you about one of them. So we do have some consumer facing content, and all of my stuff is public. And so I have a lot of consumers that follow along with my advisor facing content. So we do very little on the consumer side right now from a marketing standpoint, although that's going to be ramping up here soon. We're actually getting ready to release a directory of advisors we know are committed to tax planning because we've seen the tax plan they do that will live on our consumer facing site. So consumers can start getting directly to advisors they know focus on taxes. But so right now we do very little email marketing on the consumer side. So, but yes, it is segmented. We can track it within, we use MailChimp. We can track it within there and we can segment in several different ways. But yes, I am very intentional with two things. One, knowing that consumers will look at my advisor facing content. So I'm conscious of that, but I write it very intentionally with either advisors in mind or consumers in mind.
Okay. So how do you differentiate the content that you send in emails from the topics of your podcast episodes and what you're posting on LinkedIn? How is it all different?
If you go back through it and line it all up, it's not particularly different. And I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for or not, but one of the things that I found that makes a big difference for me is that I try to repurpose content as often as I possibly can because it makes the time requirement less on me. It takes the energy requirement down because it is exhausting writing this much. I try just that weekly, just the current version of that weekly email, because we've done couple of different variations of it, but I have a running Google Doc of every single weekly newsletter I've written in about the last year. It's like 90 pages long.
Yeah.
And that's just that email. That doesn't count the email campaigns where we have specific calls to action or specific events or specific offerings. That doesn't count the monthly newsletters we do for our members. That doesn't count any of my LinkedIn content. That doesn't count the summaries I've got to write for my podcast. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So anytime I can repurpose content, I'm repurposing content. And then I'm also at every possible step of the way, I'm trying to leverage things that I'm doing in the real world. So experiences I'm having with advisors, experiences I'm having with clients. And the part of that's just my philosophy on life in general. I want reality, not theory.
Mm. Now, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question here, and I want to assure you there's no wrong answer. There's no wrong answer. I'm asking because I think people are genuinely curious. So when you say repurpose content, what does that mean to you? Does that mean you're copy pasting what you post on LinkedIn into an email, or are you taking the same theme or topic from a LinkedIn post or a podcast episode and then just writing that in a different way in an email? Tell me a little more.
That's a good question. I very rarely copy and paste
Mm.
because I do also assume that, and well, I don't just assume, I know this, that people are consuming my content in multiple fashions. And so
Mm.
I don't want to have a situation where someone who follows me on LinkedIn unsubscribes to my emails because they're seeing the exact same thing.
Right.
So it's more thematically that when I do since my podcasts are all with guests, they're a bit more organic as far as what the topic's going to be. But when I finish a podcast, it's okay. Let me go write a couple of weekly newsletters. Let me schedule a couple of LinkedIn posts. Let me kind of package this all around the same idea. The other thing I do is I go back to content I did a year or 2 years or 3 years ago. And that's definitely where I go if I'm ever struggling for what the latest and greatest idea is going to be, because it turns out that I don't just sit down at 6:37 every morning and inspiration comes to me magically, but I do sit down every day and I make sure I get my crap done. And so sometimes that means if I'm struggling for a topic, it's great news. Taxes come back around every single year, and so I don't make a point of making every single one of my posts completely unique. I'm okay with repeating myself because I'm still getting the same questions from advisors a year and 2 and 3 years later. So I know that people still have these issues and I'm still providing value.
Thank you so much for providing some of the behind the scenes realities of what it's like to create so much content. I think that's really, really useful for people to hear.
Hillary, the other thing I'd add kind of while we're on this topic is that if you're going to commit to doing any of these types of content, I did build these weren't on day one, I wasn't doing all these things all at once. Consistency is probably the most important thing out of the gate. And I'll take consistency over quality out of the gate. Not quality from the standpoint that it's inaccurate or technically incorrect, but just get going. You've got to get reps on this stuff like you do anything else, and commit to a consistency that you will follow through on. So if you're new to LinkedIn, don't start with daily posts because I do daily posts. Commit to weekly posts or monthly posts, whatever you are going to do religiously, because your audience gets used to that. So now I've done daily posts for a long time, but that's not where I started.
Where did you start?
So originally, I was one of these irritating people who looked at LinkedIn like my personal Rolodex. That I was adamant about it. I would brag about this, that I personally knew everyone I was connected with on LinkedIn. In fact, I would turn down connection requests if it wasn't somebody I had met in person, because I looked at LinkedIn at the time. I looked at LinkedIn as, I want this to be a network of people I would feel comfortable referring to someone or asking for a referral to someone. And so that's how I originally used LinkedIn. And then when I started into this, it's not that I just started like looking down on people who use it that way. It's just, okay, now I'm using it for a different purpose. And so little over 3 years ago, I probably had around 1,000 connections on LinkedIn. And there might be people who say there's no way you knew that many people. I'm happy to go to the mat with you on that. I've worked at big national firms. I've done a lot of things in a lot of different places. I had met every single one of those people. I did not have deep relationships with all of them. I had met them. As we're recording this, I'm at like 13,098 or something like that connections. Yeah, I haven't met all those people. I love it when I do have the chance to meet those people. Like we got to meet at FinCon. But now I use LinkedIn as a platform for sharing ideas on tax planning. And so that's very much, so I don't just connect with anyone, but if more or less, if you are somehow related to the financial planning or CPA world and you reach out and want to connect with me, great, I'll connect with you. I also have the creator mode or whatever it is turned on. And so LinkedIn defaults to encouraging people to follow me as opposed to connecting. And I think my followers to connections is like 3-1 or something like that.
Wow. That's really great. Was LinkedIn really where you started? And then did you add in things like the podcast and the email marketing? Because I'm also a huge proponent of starting on one platform, getting used to that one platform, making it a consistent part of your day, and then adding in the next thing. What was your first kind of thing?
That's a good question. I think I joined LinkedIn in like 2011 or 2012. So I already had LinkedIn. Like I said, I wasn't using it for marketing, but I already had LinkedIn.
Mhm.
So when I started retirement tech services, when I started this new change for me of working with financial advisors, I did launch the podcast and start capturing emails and providing email content at the same time. But it looked a lot different then than it does now. And so I've learned over time, and it's grown over time. Um, I think that's where where the value of repurposing content comes from, because
Mm.
you also need to look at where your focus on your funnel is, because when I started all this, I was ready to, as quickly as possible, monetize this as a business. That's what I was doing. I was leaving my public accounting firm to start a business. And so I know that there are Instagram influencers and things like that, people who make money off of social media. I am aware of very few people who are able to monetize LinkedIn directly. And in fact, I've blocked most of them. That's a whole separate podcast as what I think about those people. But LinkedIn, to me, LinkedIn is a great exposure at the top of your funnel. It's not how you're going to grow your business for most people. I know there's exceptions out there. So having a way to capture email addresses as early as possible, I think, is critical, because you own that. And you need to be respectful of that, and you need to provide value. But LinkedIn can change their algorithm. They can change their privacy policy. They can change a lot of things, and that can go away too. I just assume that I could wake up tomorrow and LinkedIn could be gone, and that it wouldn't. I'd have to get creative with how I fill the top of my funnel. But my business wouldn't shut down because LinkedIn goes away.
Ooh, that's such a great nugget. Well, let's pivot now into how you work with financial advisors and really how that relates to their marketing and kind of elevates their services as well.
Yeah, so retirement tech services was created with this idea of helping advisors do more around tax planning, right? A little less humbly, really, we started this to transform the way that advisors do tax planning. So we really want to have an impact, because while taxes aren't the only piece of a client's financial picture, it's an important piece. It's a painful piece. It's a piece that everyone is aware of. And so it turns out it's a great way to add value. It's also a great way to differentiate yourself out of the gate when you're prospecting and trying to get new clients. It's a great way to get people into the top of your marketing funnel if you're talking about taxes, something they understand or think they understand and can relate to. So we help advisors with some of the day-to-day tactical things of how do you help a client actually get a backdoor Roth contribution done? How do you help them determine how much of a Roth conversion they should make, adjust withholdings, understand their equity comp, all those kinds of things. But what we found is that taxes are a great tool when it comes to marketing for financial advisors. So one of the things I'm working on right now is with some of our higher level members of the RTS community. We're working on pre-recorded webinars that have me as the subject matter expert, but that they can use to get in front of prospects, all around the concept of the IRS loan you didn't know you took out. And so all it is this education, this awareness for the taxpayer of, hey, that 401k, that IRA, that 457, 403b, whatever it is, that account that you've spent your whole career trying to fill as much as you can because someone told you that was the best way to retire. Did you know that somewhere between 0 and 50% of that could go to taxes? And most people are mind blown by that. And it prompts them to say, hey, maybe I need help in this area.
Wow. Well, it sounds like a really powerful. Is it a single webinar, or did you say it's a series of webinars?
It's a single webinar that we're working with a marketing group to help advisors be able to use over and over again.
Okay, sounds really, really powerful. And I just have to say, I love this kind of symbiotic relationship that you are creating between CPAs and advisors. I feel like not so much anymore, but I used to see a lot of LinkedIn content around kind of the mismatch in the ways that CPAs and advisors worked with the same clients, and the work that they were almost battling against each other, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, the reality is that is the dynamic between a lot of advisors and CPAs. And yes, we are very intentional about trying to change that. One of the areas of content that we put out for our members is around building better relationships with centers of influence, including tax professionals, because there should be a better relationship. We're proving that there can be a better relationship. But back to giving away the content for free, I'm also not of the delusion that I'm the only one who can be a good resource on this. And so if advisors take my content and then use it to build better relationships with other CPAs, super. I'm so excited to hear that.
Yeah, that's really great. Well, Stephen, one of the final questions that I like to ask people is there anything that I haven't asked you yet that you think is pertinent to our conversation or that could be valuable to the audience for this podcast?
Yeah, a question you haven't asked. Well, a question that I'm always trying to ask is, how do you measure the results of your efforts? Sometimes I feel like I have good answers for myself. That's probably one of the reasons I like email marketing, is because there's a lot more things we can track.
Yes.
As far as who's opening things, how many times they're opening it, are they clicking on stuff? And so we definitely pay really close attention. The problem or the challenge becomes that at the end of the day, if you're doing marketing to run a business, what you ultimately care about is who is paying you. And I don't mean that in some kind of cynical way that we're after people's money, but if we're providing a valuable service, we need to get paid for it. And so it can be really difficult because other than anecdotally, I can't really draw a lot of strong connections between like the work I put into LinkedIn and people who pay me. Right. But I meet people at conferences all the time. I get messages. I was on a call earlier today with someone who joined RTS in the last couple of months, who originally got exposed to me through LinkedIn. Then they downloaded one of our guides and got under email marketing. They didn't ultimately make the purchase decision because of LinkedIn, but it can be hard to track those things. And this cuts both ways, that especially if you're new to marketing and you don't have your own stats to look at, it's easy to look around and see someone with 100,000 followers on LinkedIn who is selling their LinkedIn course and telling you that the only way to be successful is by doing all this stuff in LinkedIn. And then wonder, well, geez, do I need to invest in paid advertising? Should I be spending 8 hours of my day commenting on other people's posts? And so, I mean, it's a question that I don't necessarily have a great answer to give you, other than anywhere you can, you need to be measuring the results of your efforts. And at a minimum, you need to measure the time you're putting into things. So even like LinkedIn, for example, we can keep coming back to that. You may not be able to measure the direct results. At a minimum, measure the input so that you can honestly tell yourself at the end of the week, here's how much time I put into LinkedIn this week. Especially for something like social media, where it can be on your phone. It gets into this world of what we like to call playing office, where you tell yourself you're being productive and you really aren't. Because yes, you can generate engagement by commenting on lots of people's posts. I comment on almost no one's posts. Not because I don't like other people's content. It's just not what I'm spending my time on currently. That's not how I got to 13,000 followers. We could do a whole other podcast episode on that. But just make sure you're actually aware of and honest with yourself about where you're spending your time.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I was just talking to another finance marketer about this exact same thing, about how to measure the ROI of marketing efforts that are unmeasurable, but that we still know are important, right? Whether that, and it's all around the top of funnel content, and either the time you put into it, the energy, or the dollars you spend outsourcing it to someone else. It's important to measure, but it's also really, really hard. So I appreciate you just kind of acknowledging that, and we do the best we can to measure the success of those efforts. So, Stephen, this has been such a fun conversation. Where are the best places that people can go to find you?
Well, you can absolutely find me on LinkedIn, Stephen Jarvis, CPA. I'll come up pretty high in the results. The Retirement Tax Services podcast is a great resource for advisors. I write all over the industry. I speak all over the industry. I love to hear from people. So, but LinkedIn's the best way to get in touch with me.
Okay, great. Well, I'll link to all of that in the show notes. And I just want to thank you for your time. This was a really fun conversation. And thank you to all of our listeners of the Finance Marketing Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. If you're eager to market your business in a way that feels good and actually gets results, sign up for the Finance Marketing Podcast newsletter in the show notes so you never miss another episode. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening app and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you back here next Friday.